Hi guys, and I am back. This is Joyce. Joyce knows who done it. How are you? Thank you guys if you've responded to our class, myself and Celtic Tarot Sheila. We're very excited about that. Um, I have another celebrity today. And then for those people that say they can't hear me, I talk too quiet. I actually have a microphone right here. If I put it right here, that's too loud. If I put it right here, that's too quiet. So I put it right there. And sometimes you have to look and check your device if you need to turn it up. Um, Today we are going to look at Natalie Wood. Natalie Wood died November 29th, 1981. And so we want to see, was this a suicide or was this an accident? And it's even been put out there that her husband, Robert Wagner, had something to do with it. But we're going to take a look at Natalie Woods. What happened with her? By the way, before I came on, I got into my really, yeah, I call it in my power. I got into my energy space and I asked my guide to bring through Natalie, and she came through. She came bouncing through. Let me just tell you. So I put, because I use a certain card tools that for someone that is trying to communicate with me in some kind of way, and so I will be able to show you that in a little bit. But she came bounding in. She was still young. She looked like she was about the age if you watch Rebel Without a Cause. She looked like that young, and she was just happy and full of life. And so I can't wait to share that with you. But Natalie was born July 20th, 1938 in San Francisco, California at 11:16 a.m. Um, so Natalie, and this is for entertainment only. Let me put that on there, and this is all alleged. But Natalie was a child star. Okay, her mother felt that she was extraordinarily beautiful and talented, and they always went to the movies. And her mother was like one of the ultimate momagers back, before they even had that term, really pushing Natalie into the movies. And I think that her mom was living through her, vicariously. Very much could have been. Um, Now we remember her when she was very young. Hopefully, you remember this movie, Miracle on 34th Street, with the Macy's parade, and that is the movie I still watch to this day, and I'm 60. I still watch that movie. Or Rebel Without a Cause, fantastic movie. She made a lot of movies. She spent most of her time, of course, growing up in front of the camera. She married Robert Wagner, who was also an actor at the time, and actually, they got married twice. They got married, and then in the 60s, they divorced, and then they ended up getting remarried. So let's talk about what happened that weekend of her death. It was Friday, November 27th, 1981. And the Wagners were going to take a trip on their yacht, the Splendor, which is something they regularly did, and they would invite, their different friends and stuff to come on the boat with them, and they would going to go out to Catalina Island. Well, it just so happened on this weekend, all their friends said no, they had other plans. Only one guest came through, and that was the actor Christopher Walken. Now, why did Christopher come? It is because he and Natalie were in the midst of filming a sci-fi picture. I think it was Brainstorm, was the movie that they were going to be in. Now, Natalie, she wanted this movie. She wanted to get back in the limelight. At this time, she was in her early 40s, I think about 43, and she wanted to have sort of that old fame and adulations like she used to had. Now, at 43, in real life, it doesn't mean very much, but in Hollywood years, that is exceedingly older. Things have changed now, but we're talking about the 80s. But things have changed. I don't know if they've changed a lot, but they've changed more. They've made a lot more. They make a lot more effort for women of a certain age. And so Natalie was 43, and she was in that age where she's not old enough to play a matronly spot, and nor she's not young enough to play a young girl. But in this particular movie with Christopher Walken, she was to have some flashback scenes that showed her. like she was in her younger day. And that really concerned her because, first of all, Christopher was younger than her, so he could get away with that, but she really couldn't. Um, I think just my opinion is that Natalie had a lot of nervousness or anxiety, primarily I think being pushed into the limelight and having all your business constantly scrutinized by everybody with a camera in their hand or the old journalists and the gossip columns that they used to write. And it was just a lot after a certain while. Now, Natalie, as a child star, grew to be really afraid of water. Okay. So what happened was there was a scene in a movie and it was called Green Promise. And in this scene, Natalie was supposed to cross this bridge on this torrential, raining night. It was rainy. The bridge went over some body of water. And as she goes over this bridge, the bridge is supposed to collapse, but she's supposed to be on the safe side, and the bridge collapsed behind her. Well, the guy that was in charge of having the bridge collapse, his timing was off. And so when the bridge went down, it was taking her down. And it took every bit of her little strength because she was still a little girl to hold on. They had the winds blowing. They had a ton of water coming down on her. There was a body of water under her that was moving really fast, so that it looked like it was, a fast river. And rather than the director stopping the film, he kept filming it because it was so authentic. Because in reality, she was trying to hang on for dear life. It was a nighttime scene, and it was very dangerous, and she ended up breaking her wrist, which never did heal correctly. From that point on, she was completely traumatized by water. She couldn't stand it. So now on this particular trip on Friday, November 27th, one thing that Natalie has to take is a drug called cyclazine. And cyclazine is actually an antihistamine, which can make you kind of tired, groggy, but she needed for seasickness. So she had been taking that pill to keep her from being seasick because the trip from the main body of California to Catalina Island was 7 hours. So that is a long trip. And they said that the water was so bad and the weather was bad, they started to turn around and go back, but then they went anyways. Now the next day, it's Saturday, November 28th, and Natalie and Christopher Walken decide to slip off the Splendor, the boat, take the dinghy and go over to the bar that's actually on Catalina Island without Robert knowing about it. And they do. And on that day, they go to the bar, they're drinking, they're flirting, they're having a good time. I think that Natalie was at a point where she wanted something different. I think that and this is just from listening to the story, I think that Natalie wanted something different. Now, my gut is telling me that I think she was kind of a little bit bored with her particular marital situation. I'm going to say that is alleged, but that's what I think, that she was a little bit bored. Chris was handsome and tall, and he was younger. And yeah, and she was having a good time. Now, on that same day, on the 28th of November, it's gotten later in the afternoon because they had gotten there early, Chris and Natalie. At this time, it's around about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and lo and behold, in comes Robert, and he's upset. He doesn't know what's going on. What are the two of them doing? They've been drinking wine all afternoon. They've been drinking all afternoon, and he eventually joins in with them, but the energy was kind of toxic. Okay, it was snarky and toxic, and at some point that night they decided, let's get up out of the bar and let's go back to the boat. And they were stumbling and falling all around, so much so that the maitre d at the particular restaurant had called the Coast Guard or whoever was watching them out there on the water. I think it was Coast Guard, but to tell them that, hey, watch out for these people. And it was Chris, it was Natalie, it was Robert, and it was one of this guy Dennis who was also working on the boat. And so they were so inebriated. He said, watch out for them. They're not in their right mind. They need to get back. Now they're trying to get on to the dinghy, and Natalie is absolutely insanely afraid. It is her worst nightmare. The water is dark and it's nighttime and the weather isn't that great, and that was her fear. Her fear that she was going to drown in this. She always had that feeling. It wasn't something that just happened that night. But they got her back on the boat, got back or on the dinghy, got back on the Splendor, the boat, and then they proceed to go to the salon, like the little sitting room, living room, and they're sitting around talking and they're drinking, and things start to get a little heated because when some people drink alcohol, um, they get angry. Okay. And so that's what happened. Robert and Chris and Natalie were talking, and Robert was trying to make some point, but Chris was siding with Natalie. And Robert got angry. And Robert jumps up and says, "Oh, you want to F my wife?" And you can figure out what the F is. You want to F my wife. At this point, Natalie is furious, okay? So she leaves. She just walks out. She's a super sensitive woman. And she's like, done with this conversation. We can't ever have a good time. Here we go. And she leaves out as if she's going to go to bed. Well, we got to keep in mind she had the cyclazine, which she kept that in her system to keep her from being seasick, which is would make her, very tired, drowsy. And every night before she would go to bed, she always took a sleeping pill, which she did that night as well. She took a sleeping pill and combined with the alcohol. Well, after Natalie left, everyone kind of broke up and everyone went their own way. Now, according to Robert, he was going to bed and he saw Natalie in the bathroom. That is the last time anybody saw her alive. He saw her and she had on like her pajamas and she had a kind of like a puffy coat for the cold and everything like that. And he was expecting her to come to bed. Well, he got in bed and he basically passed out. So, what supposedly happened, and this is kind of speculated, is that Natalie, this is per Robert Wagner, allegedly, that Natalie heard the dinghy bumping up against the Splendor, the main boat, and she hated that bumping noise trying to go to sleep. So he's speculating that she went to go and tie up the dinghy. And she'd have to untie it originally and pull it in closer and wrap it up on and tie it up tighter and next to the boat. And from there, it's only speculation that she may have supposedly, like I said, tied the boat up. The dinghy up. The boat was rocking back and forth. It was raining torrentially. It was cold out. And she slipped off the side of the boat and fell into the water. Now, some people say that she purposely got in the dinghy and she was trying to go somewhere. No, that didn't happen. She did not do that. In fact, there's even scratches on the side of the dinghy of her trying to get into the dinghy. So on the day of November 29th, well, actually it was the night, the early morning, 1, 2, whatever, of November 29th, 1981, she lost her life. She was found floating, still in the puffy coat and the nightwear and everything else. So a couple of things I want to mention is first of all, if I look at that birthday, November, which is 11, 29 is 11, I can see it is 11:11. Okay, that is a gateway that opened, and her gateway opened for her to go. I say this all the time that people have certain portals that they set up all through their life, and they could decide to go. Just like when she slipped during making the movie, the first movie where she broke her wrist in water, trying to hold on to keep from drowning. She could have gone at that time, but she went this time. And then if we add those together, and the universal year of 1981 was a number one year, that's a five. And again, that is being gone, taking a trip, leaving, walking away. Enough is enough. So I want to take a look at Natalie, and I've got to take a look at Robert Wagner too. We have to look at both of those to see what happened in this story. Um, so Natalie was born July 20th, 1938 in San Francisco, California at 11:16 a.m. Looking at her chart, she had complete freedom. She had complete freedom. This was not a destiny situation. This wasn't fated, meant to be. She had freedom. Like she could have decided that since none of our friends are going sailing to Catalina Island with us, why don't we not go? She could have decided, if I'm hearing this dinghy bumping the boat, let me just put my earplugs in and roll over and go to sleep, right? You've got to keep in mind, though, she had the antihistamine, she had the sleeping pill, and she had drank wine most of the day on Saturday. I don't know how much food she ate because her blood alcohol content was 0.14%, which is twice the legal limit for driving. So that is a lot of alcohol. Her rising is, let me just say that not only was she had freedom, but her conflicts would be public, and that makes sense because she dated some of the most famous men in Hollywood, Steve McQueen, gosh, Robert Wagner, like I said, many. Warren Beatty was another one. Frank Sinatra was another one. So everything that she did was out in the public, all her conflicts, all her issues. Her rising is in Libra, which is why she was beautiful. People that tend to have a rising in Libra, a sun in Libra, have a very attractive aura about them. They may be physically beautiful, they may not, but the energy they give off is very alive and amiable and friendly, and people like them. And that was Natalie. People loved her. She had a nice, friendly disposition, but she had a temper. She could blow. Her son is in Cancer. So her son in Cancer means that she very much loved her home and her children. She loved marriage and relationships and commitments. Um, and in fact, when I look at her 20 in the middle, because she was born July 20th, that tells me she was married. But the zero means she married somebody like freedom. She like the fool. They take a chance, they take a risk. It doesn't matter, and that's what she married. Um, her Mercury is in Leo. And that's fine. That makes her really smart. But the problem that with that is that sometimes when you are not at your best, you can be condescending, you can be arrogant, you can be overly prideful, you can talk down to people, you can be dominant, very intelligent, so intelligent that you think nobody is as intelligent as you. Her Venus is in Virgo, so that means that she is dutiful. That's why she would do what her mother wanted her to do with all that acting and everything, even though she liked it for the most part. At a certain time in your life, I'm sure that she wanted to be a young girl, playing and all of that, but she did what her mom asked her to do. Her Mars is in Cancer. That is a very self-destructive spot for Mars and Cancer. I told you about the fire and the water. So it's like putting hot oil or hot water on a burner on your stove. It will explode at a while. And with her, it would blow up on other people. Trust me, she would go off, but it more so on herself. She would beat herself up more than anybody else. Um, she wasn't happy in herself. She wasn't happy with her aging. She wasn't happy in the relationship. She was always seeking happiness outside, and if it didn't come, that would cause a problem. She's got a Jupiter in Pisces, and that tells me so much. First of all, she was oversensitive. She tended to be pessimistic. She could be very intuitive and psychic, but then she could be indecisive. And unfortunately, with Jupiter, Pisces in this Jupiter, people that tend to have that, they kind of drift off into this fantasy world where they never really come out of that. And the only way that they can medicate is self medicate, and they'll tend to turn to drugs and alcohol without really thinking about what about tomorrow or what's going to happen down the line. Um, Let me look at her and see what comes up around her. So when I called on her, I asked her, what did you do? What happened? Um, and right away she told me that she was tired. This is the Nine of Flames, but this is more so than the words, it's the picture that you should see of someone that has been beaten up, someone who used to be one of the major stars. She's not at her peak. You see, there's nothing here in the middle, there's nothing there. Yeah, the sun is not rising for her, the sun is setting. And I think that she was very tired of the Hollywood rigmarole, but yet at the same time addicted to the fame of it because that Jupiter in Pisces does talk about addictions. And I think that she was addicted to the pain. I think that she felt very lonely and isolated. And here she is, right with the water. The thing that she feared the most is the thing that she attracted to her. That's what happens. When you focus on something so much and you create fear around it, it comes to you automatically because she didn't have destiny, she had freedom. And that's her sitting right there next to the water, feeling isolated. Even that night, even though they had many a cocktails and great conversations, and it got kind of ugly in the end, but she still felt like I'm all alone. When she left, I'm telling you what my guides are telling me. When she left, she felt desperately alone. Okay, desperately alone. What happened to her? This is the Two of Orbs, or this is about balance, and she lost her balance. She didn't jump off. She wasn't taking the dinghy. She lost her balance on the top of the boat. She lost her balance. Plain and simple, it was an accident. This is her in that water. Like you can see her almost rising up, like she transitioned out of the water up into a better place. So she's transitioning out and she just said, I had to go away. And that's her walking away. She had to go away. So with her, she walked away. I did look at her number. Her personal year number was a 1, but she had just gotten into that, so she was a 9. So it was an end of a cycle for her. This was her time to go. Her life path was a 3, and with that 3, there is fun and bubbliness, but then there's the other side of it that is not as happy as what they appear. Always feeling a victim, always, crying and complaining about what is going on, even though other people would say you got it made. She didn't feel that way. When I looked at Robert Wagner, everything that happened to him after was destiny from past life, in the sense that people tried to blame him for murdering her. He did not. He did not. He was not a faithful man. Just really wasn't. I think that Natalie already knew that, but they dealt with it. He was more open to different people and different experiences. But the thing that was good that worked for them is that he had a rising in Scorpio, so he would keep those things secret and stay out of the press and be discreet, not to hurt the family situation. But I think Natalie was over it. But Natalie did not kill herself. Natalie slipped off the boat that night. But in a sense, she was ready to go. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, thumbs up. The thumbs up means so much to me. And leave a comment and let's talk about Natalie.